Hey, greetings and welcome back. So for today, I just want to do a somewhat quick but also detailed analysis of Phoenix 200. After we saw how other people were getting such variable results for this film, it raised some questions, and I, like many, was curious about getting under the hood of this thing and understanding the details and what makes this film tick. So I shot a test on my Nikon F3 using the Zeiss Milvus 50mm lens, and that choice was intentional because in terms of sharpness and resolution and contrast, I know this lens pretty well, and it's definitely a high-level performer. For the scanning, I did high-resolution scans myself at home using the Epson V700 and Silverfast scanning software. I think we all saw what a dreadful time the labs were having scanning Phoenix, and my goal was to really do the best job I could of representing the characteristics of the film without changing things around. And then, of course, as always, my light readings were taken using a handheld spot meter. And I'm going to be speaking in terms of normal exposure, or N, rather than the more problematic terms such as over or under exposure. So let's go ahead and jump in. For this test, f5.6 at 1/250th of a second is normal exposure, as that's the spot reading on the gray card, and that's going to be the anchor for the test. Now, let's look at a couple different things here. First is the grain. Now, we all heard from day one that the film has heavy grain, but there's a little bit more to it than just that. If we zoom in on the blue color patch, we can see that the grain is uneven and maybe even a little clumpy. So it's not just the film has a heavy grain, it's that the grain is irregular. And this is in contrast to other films that are also known for their heavy grain, such as Lomography's Metropolis. If you compare the two of these side by side, you can see how Metropolis is pronounced in its grain, but it's kind of more even and consistent. The other thing to note about the grain is that it's far less visible in areas of the image that read N+1. That's the exposure where the grain really starts to smooth out and show less local contrast. Now, coming back out and looking at the overall image again, you can see that it's not very sharp. And as we know, the sharpness and the apparent resolution of a photograph are a matter of the way the lens and the film work together, and that's why I use the Milvus, right? It's really sharp and has great resolving power. But this image is downright mushy. I mean, it really could have been taken on something like a Holga. All the subtleties of the lens have been eclipsed by the film because the film isn't capable of recording those optical nuances. And then the last thing I want to note about this first image is that the colors really are quite vibrant and saturated, especially at areas that are reading at normal and normal +1 exposure. Now let's take a look at the second image, and man, hold on to your hat. For this image, believe it or not, the gray card is only at N-1, so it's just one stop less light, but it looks like things have fallen off a cliff. I mean, it's really wild. Also, I want to draw attention to the color shifting. Specifically, the orange chips have shifted to red and the yellow chips have shifted to orange. And it's important to note that these colors are at normal exposure in this image. Now, the blues and the greens seem fairly stable, but the warmer hues have shifted around significantly, and they've shifted around so fast. So that's really pretty interesting. Also, we've lost a ton of detail in the shadows. The blacks are gone, and it's really hard to believe that this gray card is only at N-1. Now, if we take away one more stop of exposure, putting the gray card at N-2, I feel like we've kind of reached the end of the road here. There is some small amount of detail present at n-2, but n-3 areas of the image are definitely have crushed blacks. So now if we're going to go in the other direction with the gray card at n+1, we can see that the brighter areas of the image, those at like n+2, are kind of blowing out, and a lot of color information has been lost. If we take it one step further, adding one more stop of exposure so that now the gray card is at n+2, most of the image is pretty milky and there's very, very little color information left. So because each stop of exposure covers so much ground with this film, it is hard to say exactly what its latitude is, but roughly it seems to me like detail is lost after n+2 on the upper end, and on the darker side at n-2, most detail is gone. Now, you can go digging for it, but the cost of doing so is pretty high. So really the distance from black to white is about 3.5 to 4 stops. But if you want to make sure you've got detail, then treating the film as if it's 3 stops is a more conservative way to go. So, from a technical perspective, is Phoenix a good film stock? The answer is no, it's not even close. It's got heavy, clumpy grain, it's extremely low resolution, it has the narrowest dynamic range I've ever seen in a negative film, and it has difficulty consistently representing colors across exposures. Now, having said that it's a poor stock from a technical perspective, this is not the same as saying that we shouldn't use it. We just have to understand its limitations and hopefully its potentials as well. And I have seen interesting results shot on overcast days with muted colors and also doing things like multiple exposures. If I was going to shoot more Phoenix, I would definitely expose to favor the shadows and pull it a stop in processing, and I might also rate it at 125 instead of 200. I've heard of people doing these things, and based on the results that we saw here today, these seem like completely reasonable things to try. Now, you'll notice that I said if I was going to shoot more Phoenix, and I actually have a roll of it right here that I was going to shoot, but then I thought, well, maybe I should have a little fun. So I've decided to do a giveaway instead. So I'm going to give away this roll of Phoenix, and also, since I mentioned it in the video, I have a roll of Metropolis to give away. So both rolls will go to one viewer. If you're interested and you want to participate in the giveaway, just subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and comment on this video saying that you want the film. In a few weeks, I'll do a random drawing to choose a winner. And finally, I'll bet a lot of people watching this video have shot Phoenix themselves, so feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. How did you like the first iteration of Phoenix, and what would you be looking for in subsequent generations? So that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.